What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today, and as you can see if you clicked on the video, this is going to be our college football playoffs preseason predictions. As you know already, you're going to be watching this video on Wednesday, and this Saturday we started off with actually a pretty good game, Florida State versus Georgia Tech. So we could be in for some fireworks in that game. Outside of that, the week 0 doesn't really have too much going on for us, but before we get started, we do want to come in here, and I want to come out here and say what I believe to be the teams that are going to be the 12 teams that eventually make it into the playoffs. Now, I want to first go out and say that this is going to be heavy SEC, heavy Big Ten. We got an ACC team in there. I mean, you guys already know, basically, a lot of those top teams are still going to get in because the group of 5 team is, there will be a team that isn't in those big Power 4 conferences. I don't really think you can call it a Power 5 conference because Pac-12 no longer exists. I don't really know what that is going to look like for Oregon State and Washington State this year. But my 12th team is actually not from any of those power conferences. They are Liberty. Liberty last year, they looked good. They were undefeated last year going into their bowl game where they lost to Oregon. Obviously, that's a tough matchup. Shout out to my Oregon Ducks. That was a tough matchup, and one that saw Bo Nix also play. He did not sit out that game. So you're going up against a first-round draft pick at the quarterback position, a fourth-round draft pick in Troy Franklin, Bucky Irving, who he was in those middle rounds. I forget if he was third or fourth round. You're going up against a lot of great talent there. But the one thing Liberty has going for them, their guy that was dominant last year at the quarterback position, Caden Salter, he is back. He is back for Liberty. Almost a perfect season last year, like I said. They just ran into one of the best teams in the country. A team that, even after they lost the first time to Washington, people thought were going to make the playoffs. They were that good. They were that good that going into the Pac-12 championship game, they were predicted to beat Washington, the same Washington that went to the national championship. The only blemish on that record last year for Oregon was a Washington team that went to the national championship and put multiple receivers into the NFL, put a first-round QB into the NFL. I mean, Liberty just ran into a team you don't want to run into. Was only a few other teams in the country that had the sort of resume that Oregon could have had against Liberty. If Washington ran into Liberty, maybe it would have been a similar story. But Liberty didn't run into anybody besides us, really. And when they did run into Oregon, it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call, but I don't necessarily think that they're just going to go and let that be that. I do think that they're going to put together a good season. I do think they're going to want another big opportunity, to win a big game against one of those top teams in the country. So Caden Salter and Liberty, I do think they will make it. I just don't really think that there is going to be much pushback on them this season. I think that they can once again be very similar to what they were last year, and hopefully for them that will be enough to get into the playoffs. Somebody that's not in those the Power 4 is going to make it in. It's kind of just a dart throw at who it's going to be. Caden Salter being back with Liberty, I'm going to trust Liberty just a little bit more than some of these other teams. Number 11, we got our first Big Ten team. I think this team is going to be really good. I know there's been some up and downs, and some people like Drew Aller, some people don't. But that ain't the thing for me. When I look at Penn State, I'm looking at Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, the best running back duo potentially in the whole country. They have an elite running back room there with those two guys. I mean, maybe Ohio State can compete with it, obviously. But other than that, there's not really many teams that have as good of a running back room as Penn State. And that should be enough to help carry them through the season. Obviously, we know Penn State's one of those teams that loses one or two games. in the middle of the season. Maybe they finish the season with like a two losses or something like that. Penn State's always a team that they feel like they just can't get over the hump when it comes to playing the Ohio States, when playing the Michigans. It feels like there's always some sort of hurdle for them to jump. With an expanded playoff, I do think it makes it easier for a team like Penn State to make it in and maybe make some noise, as they might get another opportunity besides the one that they might mess up in the regular season. They'll get another opportunity potentially to play Ohio State and prove that they can do it, or another opportunity to play Michigan, or now that Oregon's in the Big Ten, Oregon or Washington or whomever it is, Penn State now, I think with the expanded playoffs, it will be enough to get in, because I do think they have the talent to make a case, obviously, for being a top 12 team in the country. This feels kind of low to me. But I have number 10 being Ole Miss, and that's because I really like Jackson Dart. I think he's going to be really good for them this season. They obviously have a lot of the same talent from last year. They picked up that defensive lineman in the portal, Walter Nolan. He was pretty solid out of A&M. They had a big portal class that came in. They seemingly improved on paper, and you got a quarterback that I trust in Jackson Dart. 10th feels a little low, kind of, to me. But ultimately, I do think that maybe some of these other teams will have some better success. You got to remember, Ole Miss is playing the SEC, so you could expect one or two losses there, and potentially a loss in a conference championship game if it presents its opportunity. Next, we get Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they have Riley Leonard starting off the season for them at the quarterback position. And you obviously pair that with a defense that is supposed to be one of the better ones in the entire country. And to me, that all seems like a recipe for success when it comes to Notre Dame. I already like their coach. I thought he did a pretty good job with that team. Like I said, defense should be one of the best defenses in the country, probably a top 10, at worst, top 20 defense in the country. Riley Leonard, an experienced quarterback coming in, should help Notre Dame figure some things out. Now, number 8 is a Big 12 team. I think this is the first Big 12 team. And this might only be, is this the only Big 12 team I put? It might have been the only Big 12 team I put. Because Texas ain't in the Big 12 no more, huh? Yeah, this is the Big 12 champions. This is the guys that I think will come out on top of that. And it's Utah. They have another year of Cam Rising. Cam Rising, obviously, he seems like he's been around forever. He gets hurt here and there, and he got an extra year of eligibility now. Cam Rising, a veteran at that QB position, a really good player when he is healthy at Utah. And the Utah team always seems to be a well-rounded team. Now you got the guy Cam Rising. They're bona fide QB1. There ain't no question if Cam Rising's QB1. He is that guy when it comes to them, and that should be plenty to win the Big 12 and to push into the playoffs. So I got Utah and Cam Rising there at number 8. Number 7, Clemson. This is the first time, really, I don't really have much to point towards. Like with Utah, I think Cam Rising's going to have a great year. With Notre Dame, I think Riley Leonard and that defense is really going to help. With Ole Miss, I really like Jackson Dart and what he brings to the table. With Penn State, I really like that running back room. With Liberty, I think Caden Salter will be there. Clemson, I don't really look at them on paper and see guys that I think, well, this guy is going to be their standout guy. Their guy that, you know what, we gotta throw some love towards. We gotta show we gotta give him his props. Clemson, to me, doesn't have one of those guys. But what they do have is Dabo Swinney. And I cannot imagine Clemson for another year missing out on not only the playoffs, an expanded playoff format. I just cannot see it. Clemson is a team that I expect to bounce back. I think they'll be fine. They're a well-coached team. I think they will get the job done. Clemson is my number 7th team. Number 6 is Georgia. Now, you might be worried and think it's weird that Georgia's so low. And don't get really all fussy about it just yet. I think Georgia is going to be one of the better teams in the country. That is not a problem. There's just teams ahead of them that I think are going to win more games. Georgia, like we seen last year, could have a hiccup here against Alabama, and last year it pushed them out of the playoffs. I think it's possible for the Georgia team to have something similar happen. I am not a huge Carson Beck believer, but I acknowledge he's a top 10 quarterback in college football. You obviously know the defense there is really, really good. This is probably the one team that I probably rated lower than a lot of people. You maybe can make an argument, Ole Miss, maybe you're higher or lower on Ole Miss. That's really anybody's guess right there. But Georgia, a lot of people are probably higher on. For me, I want to take a step back. I want to really think, do we really believe in this Georgia team? I think it is very similar to the team last year. I think the other teams potentially got better. Now, number 5, it's going to be even weirder for you because it's going to be Michigan. I know a lot of people are sour on Michigan, but as long as Michigan has Donovan Edwards, I will not be sour on Michigan. Their team last year, obviously they had Blake Corum, they had Donovan Edwards, they had J.J. McCarthy, who did not throw the football very often. They were fine. They have a first-round tight end in Colson Loveland on that team. Michigan is going to be a good team. They are going to be a good team. Yes, they lost J.J. Yes, they lost Roman Wilson. Yes, they lost Blake Corum. But their offense is not going to see as big of an impact as you think it might. The defense, I think there's a lot of talent on it still. So, Michigan, I am very, very confident are going to be a playoff team. It's just a matter, did I rank them a little bit too high? Maybe. But I'm going to ride with Michigan here at number 5. Number 4, we have Alabama. I'm a big fan of Milroe. I think he's going to be a potential Heisman candidate. I think he's definitely up there in at least the top 5, if not top 3 in preseason. If I had to rank him in preseason for the Heisman, Milroe's one of those guys that I think is just excellent. I think he will transition perfectly into the NFL. I think he's going to be one of those guys. But Milroe, for the most part, like I said, I gave him his flowers. This is, however, the first season that Alabama will be without Nick Saban. They have Kalen DeBoer as their new head coach. Obviously, he took Washington to the national championship last year. They also have a plethora of freshmen that are really good at the receiver position. They have that one receiver, that freshman receiver, and obviously a lot of the same talent that they had last year. Alabama, once again, going to be a team that you can expect in the playoffs. Always one of those teams. So, obviously, with Milroe being there, I'm not worried. Number 3, we have Texas, which is actually an SEC team. Texas, I'm a big fan of Quinn Ewers. I think he's great. Isaiah Bond's there. They got a lot of talent on that team, on that offense. I think their defense is going to be really good. Ewers, also one of those guys I see in that Heisman conversation. So, for me, it's kind of a jump ball between Texas and Alabama. I gave Texas the nod, but it could be Alabama here at 3. Now, you might be wondering, there's 2 teams that we haven't heard anything of that a lot of people are high on in Ohio State and Oregon. Which one do you have at 1 and which one do you have at 2? Well, at 2, I have Ohio State. Now, I want you to calm down before you get mad and call me a fan of Oregon, because I know I am. The only reason I gave Oregon the edge is because Ohio State has to go to Eugene this season and win in Eugene. I understand Oregon did it in Columbus a couple years ago with Anthony Brown as the starting quarterback. I do understand that it's been done to go on the road and win in this specific matchup with Oregon and Ohio State. Not necessarily a rivalry, but 2 of the better teams in the country, right? I understand that it's been done from Oregon's perspective. Ohio State, they have a lot of talent. They have Jeremiah Smith, one of the best freshmen in the country when it comes to the receiver position. They obviously have Judkins there. They have Henderson there. I mean, they got a lot of talent on that team. I believe Will Howard's their starting QB, right? The Kansas State QB from last season. They got a lot of talent. But the one thing that I think goes against Ohio State is they got to travel to Eugene, win in Autzen Stadium. By the way, if I go on, I'm not in Oregon anymore. Obviously, as you can tell behind me, I'm back back at my home in Illinois. But I've been looking to see maybe the ticket prices drop. I can get a plane flight out and go to this game. Well, this game right now, the get-in price, and this is before. Let me just click on the cheapest ticket, and this is on the Game Time app. Shout out to Game Time. Cheapest ticket for one individual. Let's do one individual only. $627. $627 after tax to get into the stadium. $627 just to get in. This is going to be one of the highest ticket prices in Oregon and Autzen history. This game's going to be sold out. This game, you ain't going to have an open seat. This game, the student section is going to bring it. This game, you're going to have people from all over the country tuned in for. And you're going to be seeing Oregon at home. A loud, hostile environment for Ohio State. How will they handle it? How will Ohio State handle it? And I got to give the edge to the home team. I just have to. I know I'm wearing the Oregon shirt. I know that. But you got to give the advantage to the home team. A home team that features Tez Johnson, one of the best receivers in the country. A home team that added Evan Stewart, one of the best receivers in the country. A guy that is in the Heisman, and I believe what I saw earlier today, one of the Heisman frontrunners, Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. You have Jordan James at running back, who might be off to the NFL next season. You have Noah Whittington, who was injured last season and is back this season. You got a lot of talent, a lot of talent on that Oregon team. You got Dan Lanning, who has quickly become one of the best coaches in college football. So when you ask me Ohio State or Oregon, I'm going to tell you Oregon. I'm going to back Oregon. Why? Because what I've seen out of Dan Lanning the last few years is he gets the most out of his guys. What I've seen out of Dan Lanning the last few years is he knows how to use his players. Look at Bo Nix. Bo Nix came from Auburn. Not a lot of people were very excited for him. He became a first-round pick. Bo Nix, it wasn't a Bo Nix problem. It was a system problem. Bo Nix was always a great player. The system, though, wasn't fitting. Dylan Gabriel, I think, has been a pretty solid QB throughout his college career. You take him to Oregon, you give him the weapons of Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden. Wow. Jurian Dickey. McClellan. I mean, there's a lot of talent that Oregon might not even use this season. Terrence Ferguson. There's a lot of talent on that Oregon team that's going to make football very fun. If you're an Oregon Ducks fan or just a college football fan in general and you like watching the top 25 matchups, you're going to love watching Oregon because that offense is going to be it's going to be fireworks every single week like it was last year. That defense got better. They returned probably one of their best defensive players last year, Jordan Birch. They brought in probably the best secondary player outside of Caleb Downs in the country when it comes to who entered the portal, and Jabbar Muhammad, who they flipped from Washington. Washington's best defensive player, guess where he came? To Oregon. A national championship caliber player came to Oregon. There's a lot to be excited about when you're an Oregon fan this season. A lot to be excited about. Offense, defense, the coaching staff. It's going to be exciting. I got to ride with Oregon to be number one in the college football playoff rankings when it's all said and done. So there you have it. Those are my teams when it comes to the college football playoffs, who I think will eventually all make it in. Those are my 12 teams. Let me know down below who you have making it in. I do know I not necessarily kicked them off, but didn't have teams like maybe like a Florida State. Let me know if you think maybe those type of teams or a team that I haven't had in there. Maybe I'm undervaluing a team. Maybe you think Florida State's going to have a fine year. That's okay. Just let me know. Just let me know down below what you think. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time.